Every time Legends of Runeterra releases a new expansion, we always have to have a look at it. That's simply because the lore this game produces is quite insane. But after the release of an expansion, later on Riot also adds new champions to all the other decks. And unfortunately, those are the champions which we might skip, even though they legitimately bring some new info into the world, with the last such a case being Nocturne. For quite a while now, I wanted to make a video about Nocturne, because yes, he is a demon, just like Tahm Kench or Evelynn, who feeds on the emotions of the living, and yet he is tied to the Shadow Isles, which doesn't really make sense. There shouldn't be anything alive on the Shadow Isles, so Nocturne wouldn't have anything to feed on here. But Riot still made it work, and that's what I wanna talk about today. There is also another spoilery thing, which I will mention at the end of the video, but beware, it is a spoiler for the Shuriman expansion. But for now, let's have a look at why Riot decided to connect Nocturne to the Shadow Isles, and why it kinda works. First of all, let's dive into Nocturne's actual card. The description is a note of Jens Tommen, a historian, who likely traveled to the Shadow Isles to learn what happened here, but also what is happening there now. It appears that once enough souls have been shaken, it breaches our world. Only hope can send the monstrosity back to its realm, but hope died here long ago, on a queen's final breath, and with a king's eternal scream. Of course, here Jens Tommen is mentioning that Nocturne is empowered by fear and horror. And in fact, once enough people are consumed by fear, that's when Nocturne can breach out of the Shadow Realm. And in the leveled up version, Jens Tommen talks about his own experience. My dreams grow more vivid with each passing night. I see creature of pure evil, writhing in the dark, twisting its way toward me. Though I was to be stationed here for another week, I have just paid for transport to Fossborough this evening. Plainly, I cannot stand this place. Couple of interesting things to note here. First, Jens is explaining what we already knew from Lux's story. From her, we learned that Nocturne stalks people in their dreams. Through nightmares, he makes them paranoid, and that's what really lets their fear spread around. But more importantly, Jens Tommen mentioned that he will be traveling to Fossborough. And Fossborough is the place where Nocturne came from. By which I mean that, as far as we know, many years ago, Lux's great-great-grandfather fought a demon here, and with his dying breath he was able to banish it. Many years later, in the present days, a boy ventured to the tomb where Nocturne was slain, but there Nocturne got into the boy's mind, and using him as a conduit he kinda leaked out into the world again. But what's interesting about this card is that Jens Tommen likely traveled between Fossborough and the Shadow Isles. But we don't know when this happened. It is either possible that Nocturne latched onto Jens Tommen and with him he traveled to the Shadow Isles, and from there all of these cards happened, or Nocturne was originally around the Shadow Isles, because you know, Nocturne mainly hang out around the mages using the Shadow technique, which were just to the north from there. But if Nocturne started from the Shadow Isles, he then latched onto Jens Tommen, and with him he traveled to Fossborough. So it is possible that A, the demon that was slain in Fossborough wasn't Nocturne, and therefore B, Nocturne got there only because of Jens Tommen. Unfortunately, because we don't know the exact timeline of these events, we don't know the real truth. But either way, what you should take away from this is that yes, Nocturne does have some influence on the Shadow Isles. But things get more interesting as we dive into the other cards. After this, there is a card for Pesky Spectre, which kinda reveals that not all souls of the Shadow Isles have to be necessarily evil. It seems like some people just died, but through sheer will they kept their consciousness, and so they just kinda exist. We already knew this from the other Shadow Isles cards as well. But then there is Shroud of Darkness, and here is where we got the juicy stuff. The description says, soon as you step outside a tooth, you'll feel them. Fingertips on your nape, light as rain. Them creatures don't budge when you come at them neither. Ain't afraid of my blade or my torch. Nothing. Awful things. The words of Whale's Tooth Looter. Now, the Whale's Tooth is the important thing here. You see, when we mentioned that Nocturne shouldn't have anything to feed on, because there shouldn't be any living beings with emotions on the Shadow Isles, that might have not been the truth, because it seems like the Whale's Tooth is some kind of an inn that is located somewhere near the Shadow Isles, if not on the edge of the Isles themselves. Because as you'll see from the other cards, it seems like the Whale's Tooth is some kind of a hub from where people go out and explore the Isles. And interestingly, I hope this place appears as some kind of a hub in the Ruined King game. I hope we get to explore the Isles, and I hope that the Whale's Tooth will serve as some kind of a save point. Anyway, then we got the Stygian Onlooker, which is just one of the creatures that spawned from the ruination. It's an owl combined with a spider. And it is probably watching one of the looters, who seems to be protected with some kind of runestones. Which interestingly points out that not all people from the Whale's Tooth have to be Demacians. We know that Jens Tommen traveled to Fossborough, but I don't think they would use runes there. So this guy might be from somewhere else. Then there are the Shadestalkers. It was just a pair of eyes at first, and a lone voice chittering in the shadows. More every time I looked back. Angrier, louder. Soon as I saw the tooth, I ran. Once again, I kinda hope that we get to see these creatures in the game. Regardless, here we have another explorer from the Whale's Tooth. Then we have Unspeakable Horror, which goes back to the notes of Jens Tommen. Every passing day saps my spirit, pulls from me the vigor that compelled me to find this place. The Whale's Tooth is full of haggard folk, seemingly lost to all endeavor, and I fear the longer I stay, the more like them I become. Once again, a confirmation that the Whale's Tooth is some kind of an inn, and all the people there are here to explore the Isles. But just like we learned from Lex's story, over time Nocturne will haunt you with nightmares, and he will make you so paranoid you will wish you never fall asleep again. That's why insomnia is so heavily connected to Nocturne as well. And then we have a Doom Beast, feasting on another one of these looters. And as you can see, the runestones didn't really help. Unless the runestones were what they were looking for here. With each passing night, the travelers grow more wary. Their slumber was restless, and their dreams vivid. Sleep no longer gave respite, and instead pulled the life from their bones. Again, this is simply how Nocturne works. He stalks you in your dreams. But there is also the Torment card, featuring the same Squid Cat. What knows you better than your own mind? What can torment you more exquisitely than your own dreams? Then we have Passage Unearned, once again featuring Jens Tommen. Of course, death is present in Demacia. We see it take our loved ones, and know that, someday, it will come for us. But on these isles, I can almost taste death. I feel it in my lungs as I breathe. I hear it whisper in my ear. It is not same abstract notion. It sits with me here, now, and it will have us all. All of these notes grow more and more interesting, because there is the likelihood that Jens Tommen will be at least referenced in the Ruined King game. I hope we learn that at the end Jens Tommen goes crazy, and he doesn't actually make it back to Fossborough. Then again, if that was the case, that would make the entire storyline of Nocturne being in Fossborough even more confusing. And then we have Encroaching Shadows. Mind or body, I fear that the nightmares of the Shadow Isles will break us all eventually, and insanity will reign forever. Once again, just Jens Tommen losing his mind. Then we have Crumble, a card connected to a creature, which is the Dusk Rider. And this is showing us what happened to the poor fellow who was sleeping before. With every setting sun, the night unfurls its dark wings and blots out the day's last remnants of hope. I kinda have nothing to add to this. I believe this creature was created by combining 2 horses and a bat. Although we don't really know what kind of animals lived on the Blessed Isles. It is possible that there were 2-headed horses with 6 hoofs, and the ruination just made them darker. But regardless, a really cool Easter egg here is that if you look at the background, I believe that those are the Vaults of Helya. Because if we go to the card representing the Vaults of Helya, at the bottom you can see the Dusk Rider. What could better lure a soul to this wretched place than the promise of eternal life and endless riches? Of course, the Vaults of Helya are most likely the reason why the people venture here. This is likely where all the most powerful artifacts were locked. And it might be the place where Thresh held his duty. Regardless, I just hope that this place appears in the Ruined King game as well. I really wanna explore it. But those were all the cards connected to Nocturne. So now, what's the deal with him? As you can see, there are living people with emotions on the Shadow Isles, so Nocturne can get his healthy sustenance here. However, I still do believe that Riot mainly put Nocturne into the Shadow Isles because that's what makes sense thematically. And this is where I get into the spoiler. If you don't wanna learn anything about the Shuriman expansion, you can close the video now. But here's the spoiler. From some of the audio files, which Riot accidentally leaked into the newest patch, we learned that the Lamp and the Wolf will become a champion in Legends of Runeterra. Yes, Kindred are coming. However, I do have the feeling that they will put Kindred onto the Shadow Isles as well. Because really, where else would they put them? The point of Kindred is that they are everywhere. In Freljord, they revere the Wolf, just like they do in Noxus. In Demacia, they more lean towards praising the Lamp, but still they are also often mentioned in Bilgewater, in Piltover and Zoan, where some believe that the Howler, which is Warwick, is an incarnation of the Wolf, and in Ionia they have their own version of Kindred, which we have seen in the Spirit Blossom event. So Kindred are connected to all the regions, but thematically and gameplay-wise, they would likely fit the Shadow Isles, if not Noxus, because Noxus really likes to praise the Wolf. So really, the point of this video is to let you know that sometimes when Riot is adding new champions to Legends of Runeterra, they have to look at the gameplay the champions offer. And if they don't have a clear place, they might assign champions to seemingly random locations. For example, just like Nocturne, someone like Fiddlesticks or Evelyn would also make sense to be in Demacia. But yeah, gameplay-wise, they are all about death and stuff. So the Shadow Isles would make sense for them as well. And then on the other side, what do you do with someone like Ryze? Ryze's hideout is technically in Demacia, but he collected the world runes from all across the world, including places like Bilgewater, Shurima, and the Freljord. So really, while everything in Legends of Runeterra is still definitely canon, we have to take everything with a tiny pinch of salt. I learned that the hard way ever since I wanted to make sense of Poros.